A renowned lawyer finds herself involved in the most unexpected case of her career, the dispute over the legacy of a comatose magnate. What seemed to be just a legal matter takes an unexpected turn when she discovers she has been chosen to bear the heirs to the fortune. But everything becomes complicated when, against all predictions, the magnate awakens and sees her as a threat. Now, amid betrayals and conspiracies, she must fight not only for the children she carries, but also for the truth that could change everyone's fate. If this story interests you, subscribe to the channel to receive all our exciting stories. Continuing. Olivia. Pearson adjusted her impeccable black blazer as she climbed the steps of the imposing Blackwell & Associates office, where she had built her reputation over the past 15 years. Her heels echoed on the polished marble of the entrance hall, complementing the aura of authority that always accompanied her. At 35, she was considered one of the most competent lawyers in New York City, known for her irreproachable ethics and ability to solve seemingly impossible cases. On that Monday morning, something seemed different. The secretary of Mr. Richard Blackwell, the firm's majority partner, was anxiously waiting for her near the elevator. "Miss Pearson, I'm glad you're here. Mr. Blackwell needs to see you urgently in his office." Olivia arched an eyebrow, intrigued. Last-minute meetings with Richard usually meant highly complex cases or important clients. She walked down the corridors, decorated with expensive abstract paintings, to the boss's office, where she was greeted with a grave expression. "Olivia, please sit down." Richard gestured to the leather armchair in front of his mahogany desk. "I just received a phone call. That could change your career." He paused dramatically, studying her reaction. "The Harrison Group has contacted us. They need someone with your profile for a peculiar case." The name made Olivia straighten up in her chair. The Harrison Group was one of the largest business conglomerates in the country, with investments ranging from real estate to cutting-edge technology. Its president, Ethan Harrison, was known both for his business genius and his explosive temperament. "Peculiar how?" she asked, maintaining the professional tone that characterized her. Richard slid a black folder across the desk. "Ethan Harrison had an accident 6 months ago. He's been in a coma since then, and the family is facing a complicated succession crisis." Olivia leafed through the documents, her brown eyes quickly absorbing the information. "I don't understand. Why do they need me specifically?" "Because you're the best in family and succession law. And mainly," he hesitated, "because they need someone absolutely discreet and reliable to handle a delicate situation." The lawyer continued reading the documents, her brow gradually furrowing. "This is unusual," she commented, coming across information about a genetic material bank and discussions about business succession. "Olivia," Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice, "the Harrison family doesn't just want legal advice. They have a specific proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" she questioned, an inexplicable shiver running down her spine. "They want you to be more than just the case lawyer." Richard paused again, as if measuring his next words. "The family has identified you as the ideal candidate for a special project, something that would ensure the continuity of the Harrison empire." Olivia felt the air grow heavier. "I'm not understanding." Before the accident, Ethan Harrison preserved his genetic material, anticipating possible future complications. Now, with him in a coma and without heirs, the family wants to use this material, and they have chosen you as, he hesitated again, the person who could bear these heirs. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Her mind, trained to analyze complex situations, seemed to have short-circuited. "This is absurd," she finally managed to say, rising from her chair. "Completely unethical and possibly illegal." "Actually," Richard picked up another document, "they have all the necessary documentation. Ethan himself left authorization for the use of the material in case of incapacity. The family just needs someone suitable, someone with an impeccable profile." "And why me?" Olivia interrupted, her voice betraying a mixture of indignation and curiosity. "Your background is perfect. Exemplary education, brilliant career, compatible genetic profile, ideal age. He consulted some notes. Plus, your discretion is legendary. You've never been involved in scandals, always kept your personal life out of the spotlight. Olivia walked to the window, observing the city stretching out below. Her mind was buzzing with the implications of this surreal proposal. All her life, planning, her dedication to her career, her independence, everything would be affected by a decision of this magnitude. "And if I refuse?" she asked, still with her back to Richard. The silence that followed was revealing. When she turned around, she found a worried expression on her boss's face. "Olivia," he said softly, "you know the influence of the Harrison family. Refusing could have significant consequences for your career." She sat down again, feeling the weight of that veiled threat. Her entire life had been built on calculated choices and absolute control over her destiny. Now she was facing a crossroads she never imagined she'd face. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked, her voice regaining its professional firmness. "They expect an answer by the end of the week," Richard replied, visibly relieved that she hadn't immediately rejected the proposal. "And Olivia, this needs to stay between us. Absolutely no one can know about this conversation." She nodded mechanically, picking up the folder with the documents. As she left the office, she felt that each step was taking her further away from the organized and predictable life she had always known. Fate, the very thing she had always tried to control, had just knocked on her door with a proposal that would change everything forever. The days following the proposal were a whirlwind in Olivia's life. Her apartment in Tribeca, normally a haven of tranquility, now seemed too small to contain her restlessness. On that Thursday night, after another exhausting day at the office, she was rereading the documents about the Harrison case for the 10th time. "This is madness," she muttered to herself, pouring her third glass of wine. The pages spread out on the dining table contained information that seemed straight out of a novel. Medical reports confirming Ethan Harrison's vegetative state, reports on the preservation of his genetic material, compatibility analyses, contracts, with million-dollar clauses. The phone rang, startling her. It was her mother, Evelyn, calling for the third time that week. Olivia hesitated before answering, knowing she couldn't share her dilemma even with her. "Hi, Mum," she answered, trying to sound natural. "Olivia, you've disappeared. Is everything okay? Your voice sounds different." "Everything's great, just a lot of work," she cut off, feeling the weight of the lie. "Important case, you know how it is. Honey, you need to slow down. 35 years old and you only think about work. When are you going to think about starting a family?" Olivia almost laughed at the irony. If her mother knew she was considering bearing triplets for the heir of one of the country's largest business empires. "Mom, I need to go. I have an important meeting early tomorrow." After ending the call, Olivia walked to the balcony. New York City sparkled under the night sky, millions of lights reminding her of how many lives were following their normal courses, while hers was about to change drastically. The next morning, a luxurious black Mercedes was waiting for her at the door of her building. The driver, impeccable in his uniform, opened the door, revealing Evelyn Harrison, the family matriarch, seated in the back. "Good morning, Ms. Pearson," Evelyn smiled, her astute eyes evaluating every detail of the lawyer. "I hope you don't mind. My surprise visit. I thought we could talk during the ride to the clinic." Olivia entered the car, immediately feeling at a disadvantage. "Clinic?" "For the preliminary exams, obviously," Evelyn responded naturally. "I assume you're considering our proposal, since you didn't refuse it immediately." The car glided smoothly through traffic as Evelyn expounded on the details of the agreement. With each word, Olivia realized that the family had meticulously planned everything. "The fertilization would be carried out immediately after your acceptance," Evelyn explained. "Our doctors have already confirmed the viability of a multiple pregnancy. 3 heirs would ensure the continuity of the Harrison empire." "And if I refuse?" Olivia asked, repeating the same question she had asked Richard. Evelyn smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Pearson, we are practical people. Our influence in the legal world is considerable. It would be regrettable to see such a promising career encounter unnecessary obstacles. The car stopped in front of a luxurious private clinic. "Think of this as a partnership," Evelyn continued. "You give us something we need and we guarantee your future and that of the children. Everyone wins." Olivia observed the clinic building, her mind working quickly. And if Ethan Harrison wakes up? The doctors are unanimous. The chances are minimal. Even if the improbable happens, by then the children will have been born and your role will be fulfilled. You can go on with your life normally with generous financial compensation. Inside the clinic, Olivia was received like a queen. Renowned doctors presented detailed treatment plans. Smiling nurses collected samples for tests, and an even more extensive contract was placed before her. "We need your answer by Monday," Evelyn informed as they left the clinic. Time is crucial in this process. Back in her apartment that night, Olivia stared at the city once again. The Harrisons' proposal was clear: 9 months of her life in exchange for lifelong guarantees. Her analytical mind tried to rationalize. It was a commercial transaction, nothing more. But something deep inside her screamed that she was about to cross a line of no return. On Sunday night, after 48 hours of intense reflection, Olivia picked up her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed the message to Richard: "I accept the proposal. Schedule the meeting for formalization." As she pressed send, she felt as if she had just signed a pact with destiny. She didn't know yet, but that decision would trigger a series of events that would transform not only her life, but that of everyone around her. The Harrison family's power game was just beginning, and she had just become a fundamental piece in it. The process began faster than Olivia had imagined. Within days, her life transformed into a sequence of medical consultations, exams, and confidential meetings. The firm provided her with a private room, telling the other partners she was dedicated to a confidential case that required absolute discretion. On a particularly tense afternoon, Olivia met Alexander Harrison, Ethan's younger brother, during a meeting at the family's luxurious office in Manhattan. Unlike Evelyn's calculated coldness, Alexander exuded a dangerous charm that immediately put Olivia on alert. "So you're the chosen one," he smiled, his green eyes studying her with interest. "I must say my mother has good taste in business and in choosing the right people." "I'm here strictly for professional reasons, Mr. Harrison," Olivia responded dryly, maintaining the formal posture that characterized her. "Please, call me Alex. After all, you'll be the mother of my nieces and nephews," he approached, lowering his voice. "But I confess I'm curious. What makes a lawyer of your caliber accept such a peculiar proposal?" Before Olivia could answer, Evelyn entered the room, accompanied by a middle-aged man who introduced himself as Dr. Matthews, a specialist in assisted reproduction. "Excellent news," announced the doctor, spreading some exams on the conference table. "All results are perfectly compatible. We can start the protocol immediately." Olivia felt her stomach churn as the doctor began to detail the procedure. 3 embryos would be implanted, maximizing the chances of success. Her life would be completely monitored in the coming months. Diet, exercise, work routine, everything would be controlled by the family's medical team. "And what about the hospital?" Alexander asked, surprising Olivia with his interest in the details. "Everything's already arranged," Evelyn intervened. "Ms. Pearson will stay in our private clinic during the entire final period of pregnancy. We'll ensure total privacy." "And my work?" Olivia questioned, feeling increasingly suffocated by the family's plans. "Don't worry," Evelyn smiled that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've already talked to your boss. You'll maintain some less demanding cases, enough work to keep up appearances, but nothing that compromises the baby's well-being." That night, alone in her apartment, Olivia received an unexpected message from Alexander. "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? There are some aspects of the agreement we need to discuss privately." After hesitating, Olivia accepted the invitation. The next day, she met Alexander at a discreet restaurant in Greenwich Village. The intimate atmosphere and soft lighting created an ambience that seemed out of place for a business meeting. "You have no idea of the snake pit you're entering," Alexander commented after the waiter served the wine. My mother may seem the dominant force, but there are other interests at play. What kind of interests? Olivia asked. Her professional curiosity piqued. Ethan wasn't just the president of the group. He lowered his voice, leaning over the table. He was about to make significant changes in the company's power structure, changes that would displease many people. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand that you're not just a, how can I say, incubator for heirs, he smiled, but his eyes remained serious. You're a piece in a much bigger game. The dinner proceeded with Alexander gradually revealing more details about the family's internal disputes. Olivia absorbed every piece of information, her analytical mind beginning to form a more complex picture of the situation she had gotten herself into. At the end of the night, when Alexander dropped her off, at home he made one last comment that disturbed her. Be careful with my mother, Olivia. She didn't choose you just for your impeccable profile. There's something else she saw in you, something that can be useful for her plans. Lying in her bed that night, Olivia relived every moment of the day. The medical procedure was scheduled for the following week, and there was no turning back. But now, in addition to the weight of the decision she had made, she also carried the awareness that she was diving into much deeper and more turbulent waters than she had imagined. Her phone vibrated with a new message. It was from Evelyn. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. clinic. Don't be late. And Olivia, I hope you were prudent in your dinner with Alexander. There are things that should remain strictly within the family. Olivia stared at the message, realizing that every step of hers was being monitored. The sense of control over her own life, which was already slipping through her fingers, now seemed completely illusory. 3 weeks after the procedure, Olivia stared at the positive pregnancy test in her bathroom, her hands trembling slightly. The news, even though expected, caused a surprising impact. It wasn't just a positive test, it was confirmation that her life had irreversibly changed. Congratulations, Miss Pearson, said Dr. Matthews during the first ultrasound. There are 3 embryos, exactly as we planned, all perfectly implanted. Evelyn, who insisted on being present at all consultations, couldn't disguise her smile of satisfaction. 3 heirs. The Harrison empire is secured. The following weeks brought drastic changes. Olivia was practically forced to move into one of the family's apartments in the Upper East Side, under the pretext of being closer to the clinic. The TI new environment, although luxurious, felt like a golden cage. Security cameras monitored every entrance and exit, and a team of staff was always nearby, theoretically to attend to her needs. But Olivia knew they also reported her every move to Evelyn. On a particularly difficult afternoon, while trying to work on her laptop, she received an unexpected visit. Martha, the former housekeeper of the Harrison mansion and Ethan's confidant, appeared with the excuse of bringing some special teas for nausea. You shouldn't be here alone, miss, said Martha, her voice laden with a southern accent and genuine concern. It ain't natural, all this control. In Mr. Ethan's time at tea, you worked directly with him, Olivia asked, suddenly interested. Martha looked nervously around before answering, for 20 years, and I can tell you one thing, his accident wasn't quite like they said. Before she could elaborate, they were interrupted by Alexander's arrival. Martha quickly withdrew, leaving another mystery about the Harrison empire hanging in the air. You shouldn't listen to Martha, Alexander commented, pouring himself a glass of water. She's been inventing conspiracy theories since Ethan's accident. Why are you really here, Alex? Olivia asked directly. He approached the window, observing the city. I came to warn you. The group's board meets next week. Some members are not too satisfied with the current situation. What situation? The pregnancy. The succession, he corrected. With Ethan in a coma and 3 heirs on the way, power is in limbo. My mother is moving her pieces, but there are other players on the board. Olivia felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the pregnancy. And what's your position in this game? Alexander smiled enigmatically. Let's say I have my own interests. And you, Olivia? Have you stopped to think about the power you'll have as the mother of the Harrison heirs? The question caught Olivia by surprise. Until then, she had been so focused on dealing with the changes in her life that she hadn't fully considered the political implications of her position. "I'm not interested in power," she responded firmly. "I just want to ensure these children's well-being." "Noble," Alexander laughed softly, "but naive. In this family, everything is about power, and you, whether you want it or not, are already at the center of the hurricane." That night, after Alexander left, Olivia received a mysterious envelope. Inside were old photos of Ethan's accident, images that were never released to the media. Along with them, an anonymous note. "Not everything is as it seems. Be careful who you trust." Exhausted, Olivia caressed her still imperceptible belly. Somewhere in the city, Ethan Harrison continued in his deep sleep, unaware that he would be a father. And somewhere in that same building, she knew there were cameras recording her movements, reports being made about her routine, people monitoring her every step. Her phone rang. It was Richard, her boss, wanting to discuss some pending cases. But before she could answer, she received a message from Evelyn. "Don't answer, remember our agreement. Your only priority now is the babies." Olivia looked at the phone, then at the accident photos, and finally at her own image reflected in the window. The independent and controlled lawyer she had always been was slowly giving way to someone she barely recognized, a woman at the center of a web of intrigues, carrying not just 3 lives but also the weight of secrets she was beginning to uncover. The 5th month of pregnancy brought not only evident physical changes to Olivia, but also a series of disturbing discoveries. Her days in the Upper East Side apartment had transformed into a routine of cautious investigation, taking advantage of every gap in the constant surveillance to seek answers about Ethan's accident. During a particularly hot afternoon in July, Olivia received her first authorized visit since the beginning of the pregnancy. Her friend and law school colleague Samantha Wells, now a renowned criminal forensic expert, discreetly analyzed the accident photos while pretending to admire the city movement from the window. "There's something very strange here," Samantha murmured, adjusting her glasses. "The skid marks, the car's position, it doesn't fit with a simple accident." Olivia felt the babies move, as if responding to her own agitation. "What do you mean?" "These marks suggest the car was forced off the road. And look at this," Samantha pointed to an almost imperceptible detail. "There are signs of tampering with the brake system." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jessica, the new personal assistant assigned by Evelyn. "Ms. Pearson, it's time for your afternoon tea and vital signs check." Samantha understood the cue, discreetly tucking the photos into her bag. "I need to go, but I'll investigate further," she whispered, while saying goodbye with a hug. That night, during the solitary dinner that had become her custom, Olivia was surprised by Martha's visit. The Southern housekeeper brought not only dessert but also valuable information. "On the day of the accident," Martha began, nervously checking if they were really alone, "Mr. Ethan was different. He had just returned from a meeting with the board. He was agitated, said he needed to resolve something urgent." "What kind of meeting?" Olivia asked, her investigative instinct sharpened. "About changes in the company. Big changes." Martha lowered her voice even more. "He discovered something that upset him. He tried to call Mr. Alexander several times before leaving, but couldn't reach him." A strong kick from one of the babies made Olivia adjust in her chair. Martha smiled tenderly, her eyes misty. "They're special, you know. Mr. Ethan always wanted children, but after he found out about his condition—" "What condition?" Olivia interrupted, anxious. The sound of the elevator announcing someone's arrival made Martha abruptly fall silent. Seconds later, Evelyn entered the apartment, her artificial smile contrasting with her icy gaze. "Martha, dear, I didn't know you were here," said Evelyn, her tone making it clear she knew exactly about the housekeeper's presence. "Olivia needs to rest now, and you have a lot of work at the mansion, don't you?" After Martha's hasty departure, Evelyn turned to Olivia. "We need to talk about your excessive curiosity." "I don't know what you're talking about," Olivia responded, maintaining her composure. "The accident photos, the conversations with Martha, your forensic expert friend," Evelyn enumerated, sitting down elegantly. "I thought our agreement was clear. Your only concern should be the baby's health." "How do you know about Samantha?" Olivia questioned, feeling a chill. "Darling, nothing happens in this apartment without my knowledge," Evelyn smiled. "And I suggest you keep your distance from matters that don't concern you. It would be terrible if something happened to complicate this very special pregnancy." The veiled threat hung in the air like poison. Olivia instinctively caressed her belly, feeling the triplets' movements, now her only source of comfort, and ironically, also her greatest vulnerability. "Oh, and one more thing," Evelyn added, rising to leave. "Alexander won't be visiting you anymore. He's been busy with other matters." After Evelyn's departure, Olivia received an anonymous message on her cell phone. "Mount Sinai Hospital, room 712. There's more to the accident than they think. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Lying in her bed that night, Olivia felt the weight of the day's discoveries. The babies moved restlessly, as if sharing her apprehension. Somewhere in the city, Ethan Harrison continued in his deep sleep. But the secrets surrounding his accident were beginning to emerge. The lawyer who had always trusted facts and evidence now found herself immersed in a sea of conspiracies and veiled threats. Her protectors were her jailers, and each new discovery led her deeper into the labyrinth of Harrison family secrets. Caressing her prominent belly, Olivia made a decision. As dangerous as it might be, she needed to uncover the truth, not just for herself, but for the 3 little beings who now depended on her. Tomorrow, somehow, she would find a way to get to the hospital. Some truths were worth the risk. Getting to Mount Sinai Hospital unnoticed was a challenge that required all of Olivia's cunning. Taking advantage of a routine checkup scheduled elsewhere, she managed to evade her security detail using an emergency exit. Her heart raced as she ascended to the 7th floor, not just from the adrenaline of the escape, but also from the extra weight she carried in her 5-month pregnant belly. The hospital corridor was quiet when she reached room 712. The door was ajar, and inside the room she found an elderly nurse who introduced herself as Nurse Betty. "I've been expecting you," said the nurse, carefully closing the door. "I'm the one who's been caring for Mr. Harrison for 6 months." Olivia observed the unconscious man in the bed. Ethan Harrison, even in his current state, maintained an aura of power. His strong features and aristocratic posture remained evident, despite months of inactivity. "Why did you call me here?" Olivia asked, her voice barely disguising her anxiety. "Because something's wrong," Betty responded, checking the door again. "On the night of the accident, I was on duty when they brought him in. I overheard a conversation as between Mrs. Harrison and the doctors. They were talking about medication, about keeping him sedated." Olivia felt the babies move restlessly. "Are you suggesting that his coma might not be entirely natural?" Betty completed. "And there's more. In the last few days, I've noticed changes in his brain patterns. He's responding, Ms. Pearson. But whenever I report this, the medication is adjusted." A noise in the corridor made both of them start. Betty quickly picked up a clipboard, pretending to make routine notes. "I needed you to know," continued the nurse in a low voice, "especially now that you're carrying his children. Something tells me Mr. Harrison wouldn't approve of many things that are happening." Olivia approached the bed, observing the man who was, technically, the father of her children. Her eyes fixed on a small movement of his fingers, so subtle it could have gone unnoticed. "Is he fighting?" Betty confirmed. "Against the medication, against whatever they're doing to him. But we need to be careful. Mrs. Harrison has eyes everywhere." At that moment, Olivia's phone vibrated. A message from Jessica, her constant watchdog. "Where are you? Mrs. Harrison is on her way to the clinic for your appointment." "I need to go," Olivia said hastily. "But how can I trust that what you're telling me is true?" Betty discreetly handed her a USB drive. "Here are the records from the last 6 months. Medications, brain patterns, everything. You're a lawyer. You'll know what to do with this." Before leaving, Olivia felt an inexplicable impulse. She approached Ethan and gently guided his hand to her prominent belly. At the exact moment his hand touched where the babies were moving, his fingers contracted slightly. "They're yours," she whispered, though she doubted he could hear. "And I promise I'll uncover the truth." The return to the apartment was as tense as the escape. Olivia had barely hidden the USB drive when Evelyn arrived, apparently furious about her delay at the clinic. "Where were you?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with anger. "I had to make an emergency stop," Olivia responded, maintaining her calm. "Pregnancy nausea, you know." Evelyn studied her for a long moment. "Olivia, dear, I hope you understand your position. These children are the future of the Harrison empire. We can't afford unpredictabilities." That night, after everyone had gone, Olivia connected the USB drive to her laptop. The files confirmed Betty's story. There was a clear pattern of suppression of Ethan's brain responses through controlled medication. As she analyzed the documents, a movement in her belly made her pause. It was different from the others, stronger, as if all three babies had moved in perfect synchrony. At that moment, Olivia had an inexplicable certainty. Ethan Harrison's children were not just pieces in a power game. They were her connection to the truth. Her phone rang. It was Alexander. After weeks of silence, his message was short. "We need to talk. It's about my brother. He's waking up." The meeting with Alexander took place in the penthouse of a building in the Upper West Side. Far from the eyes and ears of Evelyn, Olivia, now 6 months pregnant, observed the city lights while waiting for the explanations Alexander had promised. "The doctors noticed significant changes in the last few days," Alexander began, pouring himself a drink. "Ethan is responding to stimuli. It's only a matter of time before he wakes up completely." "Does your mother know about this?" Olivia asked, instinctively caressing her belly. "Of course she knows. Why do you think surveillance over you has been doubled?" He laughed humorlessly. "One thing is to have control over the heirs with Ethan in a coma. It's a completely different matter to explain to him how they authorized a fertilization without his conscious consent." Olivia felt the babies move restlessly, as if responding to the tension of the moment. "What happens when he wakes up?" "Yeah, depends," Alexander approached, lowering his voice. "On what he remembers about the accident, on what he discovers about what happened while he was unconscious, and on how he reacts to the news that he'll be the father of triplets." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need an ally," he admitted. "When Ethan wakes up, there will be an earthquake in the family. My mother is already moving her pieces, transferring assets, preparing documents. She wants to ensure that even with Ethan awake, control remains in her hands." A sound of footsteps in the corridor made them both fall silent. Moments later, Martha appeared, breathless. "Thank God I found you," the housekeeper said, closing the door. "I just overheard a conversation between Mrs. Harrison and Dr. Matthews. They're planning to transfer Mr. Ethan to a clinic abroad." "When?" Alexander asked, tense. "Tomorrow night. The documents are already prepared." Olivia felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the pregnancy. "They want to get him out of the country before he fully wakes up." "We need to act," Alexander declared. "If Ethan is transferred, we lose any chance of proving what happened." "And what exactly happened?" Olivia questioned, facing Alexander. "You know more than you're telling." Alexander hesitated, looking at Martha before continuing. "In the week before the accident, Ethan discovered irregularities in the companies. Millions in embezzlement, ghost contracts, a whole scheme that involved board members and our own mother. That's why the accident wasn't an accident," Olivia concluded. "And that's why we need to prevent this transfer," Alexander completed. "But we need to do it legally. That's where you come in, Olivia." "How so?" "You're the mother of his heirs. Technically, you have legal rights over decisions that might affect the children's future, including preventing the transfer of their father to another country." Olivia quickly processed the information, her lawyer's brain already formulating strategies. "I'd need an injunction, documents proving the pregnancy, the genetic link, evidence that the transfer could be harmful." "I have all of that," Martha interrupted, pulling an envelope from her bag. I've been keeping evidence for months, including copies of medical records showing the manipulation of medication. A strong kick from one of the babies made Olivia lean against the wall. Alexander supported her, concerned. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she answered, catching her breath. "They get more agitated when I'm stressed." "Olivia." Alexander held her hands, his tone suddenly serious. "I know I have no right to ask this. You're already too involved in this story, but Ethan is my brother, and these children, they're the only real family he has now." Before Olivia could respond, her cell phone vibrated with a message from Evelyn. "Where are you? The doctors need to do an emergency checkup. Come to the clinic immediately." "She knows," Olivia murmured. "Somehow she knows we're together." "Go," Alexander instructed. "Keep up appearances. I'll take care of the documents for the injunction." "But Olivia, be careful. My mother is capable of anything to maintain control." On the way back to the clinic, Olivia felt the weight of every decision she had made up to that point. The babies moved constantly, as if participating in her internal agitation. In a few hours, she would need to decide. Use her position as the mother of the Harrison heirs to prevent Ethan's transfer, directly confronting Evelyn, or remain passive and allow the man she had never met, but who was the father of her children, to be taken away before he could tell his version of the story. The driver stopped in front of the clinic, where Evelyn waited with her usual authoritative pose. But there was something different in her eyes today, a glimmer of urgency, almost desperation. "Darling," she smiled, her tone falsely sweet, "we have much to discuss about the children's future." The clinic's meeting room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Olivia, seated across from Evelyn, felt the weight of the moment. Dr. Matthews was present, along with two lawyers she had never seen before. "Olivia, dear," Evelyn began, her melodious voice contrasting with the tension in the room. "We need to discuss some changes in our arrangements. As you must know, Ethan's condition has presented complications." "What kind of complications?" Olivia asked, maintaining a neutral tone while her hand rested protectively on her belly. "Neurological instability," Dr. Matthews promptly intervened. "We need a specialized center to ensure the best care. In Switzerland, there's a clinic." "And what about the babies?" Olivia interrupted. "How does the medical monitoring of them work with their father on another continent?" Evelyn smiled, that smile that never reached her eyes. "We've thought of everything, dear. You'll have the best assistance here, and when the children are born..." She paused calculatedly. "Well, we have an agreement, don't we?" One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table. "New documents to sign, Ms. Pearson. Just some updates to our original agreement." Olivia opened the folder, her heart racing as she read the clauses. The new contract would effectively remove her from any decision about the children's future after birth. Moreover, there was an express clause waiving any right to question Ethan's transfer. "We need your signature today," Evelyn pressed. "Time is of the essence." "And if I refuse?" Olivia asked, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. Evelyn's smile disappeared. "Olivia, be reasonable. You're an intelligent woman. You know that certain decisions have consequences." At that moment, Olivia's cell phone vibrated, a message from Alexander. "Injunction granted. Judge prohibited any transfer. Court officer on the way." "I need time to review the documents," Olivia said, rising with difficulty due to her advanced belly. "As a lawyer, you understand that I can't sign anything without proper review." "Sit down," Evelyn ordered, her tone now icy. "You won't leave this room without signing." Olivia faced the Harrison matriarch's gaze. "Actually, Evelyn, you have no authority to keep me here, and as for Ethan's transfer, I'm afraid that won't be possible." The sound of voices in the corridor interrupted the tension. Moments later, a court officer entered the room accompanied by Alexander and two police officers. "Mrs. Evelyn Harrison," the officer asked, extending a document. "This is a court order prohibiting the transfer of Mr. Ethan Harrison to any facility outside the country." Evelyn's face transformed into a mask of fury. "How dare you," she hissed at Olivia, "after everything we've done for you?" "Done for me?" Olivia retorted, her voice trembling with indignation. You manipulated me, isolated me, tried to turn me into an incubator without rights. But you forgot one detail: I'm still a lawyer. And as the mother of Ethan's children, I have the legal right to protect their interests. Dr. Matthews tried to intervene. The transfer is medically necessary. Just like the medication that keeps Ethan sedated? Alexander questioned, revealing a folder with the records obtained by Betty. We have evidence, doctor, of everything. The babies chose that moment to move vigorously, as if sensing the tension in the room. Olivia leaned on a chair, taking a deep breath. This doesn't end here, Evelyn threatened, standing up. You have no idea what you've started, Olivia. No, Evelyn, Olivia responded, catching her breath. This started long before me, with an accident that wasn't an accident, with an induced coma, with all the manipulation to keep Ethan away from what's rightfully his. Alexander approached Olivia, offering support. It's over, Mother. The police are investigating the accident. The medical records have been attached to the case. And in a few hours, when Ethan fully wakes up— If he wakes up, Evelyn interrupted, a dangerous glint in her eyes. He's already waking up, a weak voice sounded from the door. It was Betty, the nurse. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, he's already conscious. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia felt the babies move once more, as if responding to an invisible force. Somewhere in that clinic, Ethan Harrison was awakening to a world very different from the one he had left. A world where he was the father of yet unborn triplets, where his own mother had conspired against him, and where a lawyer he had never met had become a central piece in his story. Room 712 at Mount Sinai Hospital was different that night. The machines that once monitored Ethan Harrison's deep sleep now recorded the vital signs of a fully conscious man. Olivia paused at the door, her heart beating so hard it seemed to compete with the movements of the babies in her belly. Ethan. Harrison was sitting up in bed, still pale and visibly weakened by months of inactivity, but his eyes, the same shade of green that Olivia had seen in photos, were alert and focused. Alexander was by his side, finishing explaining the events of the past few months. Come in, Ethan said, his voice hoarse from disuse. I think we need to talk. Olivia slowly advanced into the room, conscious of every movement. She stopped a few steps from the bed, unsure how to proceed. The silence that followed was dense, laden with unasked questions and necessary explanations. Alexander told me everything, Ethan finally spoke, his eyes fixed on Olivia's prominent belly. About what our mother did, about the fertilization, about how you tried to prevent my transfer. I'm sorry, Olivia began, but was interrupted by a gesture from Ethan. Don't apologize, he said firmly. From what I understand, you were also manipulated in this story. The question now is, what do we do from here? One of the babies gave a particularly strong kick, causing Olivia to instinctively place her hand on her belly. Ethan observed the movement with an indescribable expression. They're active, Olivia commented, trying to break the tension. May I? Ethan asked, hesitantly extending his hand. Olivia approached, allowing him to touch her belly. The moment his hand made contact, all three babies moved in synchrony as they had done that day when Olivia visited Ethan in his coma. Amazing, he murmured, his eyes misty. I always wanted children, you know, but after I found out about my condition, that's why I preserved the genetic material. I never imagined it would be used like this. You weren't supposed to wake up, Olivia said softly. Your mother's plan was to keep you sedated until the birth and then send me to a clinic abroad, Ethan completed, his expression hardening, away from the empire I built, away from my children. Alexander, who had been observing the scene in silence, intervened. The police are investigating the accident. The evidence that Olivia and Martha gathered is substantial. I don't want our mother arrested, Ethan declared, surprising both of them. I want her gone, from the company, from the family, from everything, but I won't expose the Harrison's name to a public scandal. Olivia felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. And what about Dean, about us, the children? Ethan studied her for a long time before answering, "You risked everything to protect them. To protect me, even without knowing me. That says a lot about your character." "I didn't do it thinking of gaining anything," Olivia stated. "I just wanted to do what was right. And that's why I want you involved in their lives," Ethan said firmly. "Not as what my mother planned, a mere incubator," Olivia completed with a slight smile. "As a mother," he corrected, "with all the rights and responsibilities that implies." At that moment, they were interrupted by Martha's agitated arrival. "Mr. Ethan, Mrs. Harrison, she's trying to access the company's offshore accounts." Ethan tried to get up, but his legs weakened. Alexander quickly supported him. "Give me your phone," Ethan asked Olivia. After a few quick commands, he smiled weakly. "Password changed. She never knew I had a second level of authentication." "You need to rest," Olivia said, noticing his pallor. "You're right," he agreed, leaning back on the pillows. "But first, Olivia, I want you to know. I'm going to spend the next few months recovering, reorganizing the company, fixing what my mother messed up, but I want to get to know you, really. Not just as the mother of my children, but as who you are." Olivia felt the tears she had been holding back start to fall. "I want to get to know you too. The real you, not just Ethan Harrison from the headlines." "And we'll have time for that," he assured, his hand finding hers. "After all, we have 3 good reasons to make this work." As if in response, the babies moved again. Olivia and Ethan laughed, the sound breaking the last barriers of formality between them. Alexander and Martha discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone. "They recognize your voice," Olivia commented. "They always get more active when you talk." "Even in the coma?" Ethan asked, curious. "Especially in the coma," she confirmed. "I think somehow they always knew you'd come back." 3 months passed like a breath. The garden of the Harrison mansion, now renovated under Martha's care, was decorated in soft shades of green and white. Olivia, seated in a comfortable lounge chair, watched Ethan walking across the lawn, his strength almost fully recovered after intense physiotherapy sessions. "I still can't believe that in 2 weeks we'll be parents," he commented, sitting down next to her. His hand naturally found its way to Olivia's belly, where the triplets seemed to be having a private party. The last few months had been intense. After Evelyn's removal, who now lived in London, as per the family agreement, Ethan once again took control of the Harrison empire. The investigations into the accident were discreetly closed, with those truly responsible being silently removed from the company. "The nursery decorations are finished," Olivia commented, smiling as she felt the babies react to their father's voice. "Martha did an amazing job coordinating everything. He just always knew what was best for this family," Ethan responded, his voice laden with gratitude. "It was she who kept the evidence that helped us uncover the truth." Alexander appeared in the garden, carrying a folder of documents. In recent months, he had proven to be an invaluable ally, helping with the company's restructuring while Ethan recovered. "The final contracts for the corporate reorganization," he announced, handing the papers to his brother. "With this, the group's new structure is officially established." Olivia observed the 2 brothers talking about business, marveling at how life could change in such a short time. Less than a year ago, she was a lawyer focused solely on her career. Now she was about to give birth to triplets and had found a connection she never imagined possible. "Oh, I almost forgot," Alexander smiled, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "The renovation of your office in the company building is ready, Olivia." Ethan had insisted that she maintain her professional independence. "You're a brilliant lawyer," he had said. "I don't want you to give that up for our sake." The sound of footsteps on the grass announced Samantha's arrival, the forensic expert friend who had helped so much in uncovering the truth about the accident. "The babies haven't given any signs yet?" she asked, sitting near Olivia. "The doctor said it could be any moment," Olivia responded, adjusting herself in the chair. "They seem quite comfortable in there." "How's your mother?" Samantha asked. As she gotten used to the idea of being a grandmother to triplets, Olivia laughed, remembering Evelyn's reaction when she finally told the whole story. After the initial shock, Her mother had become the most excited grandmother in the world, already planning all the spoiling she would give her grandchildren. Shiku calls 3 times a day to check if labor has started, Ethan responded, amused. The sun was beginning to set, painting the New York City sky with shades of orange and pink. Martha appeared to announce that dinner was served, but before they could get up, Olivia felt something different. "Ethan," she called, her voice trembling slightly. "I think it's time." The next hours were a whirlwind of emotions. In the delivery room of the best maternity hospital in New York City, Olivia gave birth to 3 healthy and perfect babies, 2 girls and a boy. Ethan, by her side throughout the process, couldn't contain his tears as he held his children for the first time. "They're beautiful," he whispered, kissing Olivia's forehead. "Like you." A week later, back at the mansion with the babies, Olivia watched Ethan cradling one of the triplets while the 2 girls slept peacefully in their cribs. The scene seemed like it was from a dream, one she never knew she had until she lived it. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked softly, placing the sleeping baby in his crib. "Regret what?" "Accepting that crazy proposal 9 months ago," he smiled, sitting next to her in the nursery armchair. Olivia looked at her children sleeping peacefully, then at the man beside her, the one she had first known through documents and photographs, then as a coma patient, and now as someone who had become essential in her life. "You know," she began, intertwining her fingers with his, "sometimes the best events in our lives begin with the most unlikely decisions." Ethan pulled her closer, gently kissing her hair. "We still have a lot to discover about each other." "And we have all the time in the world for that," she responded, smiling as she heard the soft snoring of the babies. Outside in the garden, the lights of New York City began to twinkle against the night sky. The city that had witnessed their entire story continued its frenzied rhythm, but here in this room time seemed gentler. Olivia knew that the challenges weren't over. There was still a company to manage, 3 babies to raise, a relationship to build. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to control every aspect of the future. Sometimes, she thought, destiny knows exactly what it's doing, even when it seems to make no sense at all. And sometimes, the most unlikely stories are those that were written in the stars from the beginning.